I want to get into the 2024 presidential election. I'm sure you've heard a lot of rumblings about this. Recently, this journalist from the Washington Post, now Case Study QB clipped this, shout out to Case Study, David Ignatius, actually released an op-ed that says Joe Biden should not run for re-election. I agree with him 100%, but I want people to hear what he said here on Morning Joe. I think this is sending off a lot of alarms, particularly to the Democratic Party, especially since it came from an outlet like the Washington Post, one of the really big mainstream outlets. Everyone, listen to what he said.
I think it comes down to what we were talking about earlier. Is Joe Biden the person who can stop Donald Trump or somebody like Trump who gets the Republican nomination? That's what he's got. He's got to look in the mirror, search his soul, and make that decision. And I wanted to raise that question. I'd like him to think that through carefully because I have my concerns.
Well,
okay, I want to stop it there, and I want to get your take on this, Christian, as well. Given Joe Biden's cognitive ability at this point in time, he's having difficulty pulling words together, walking, he's falling down, he doesn't know where he's supposed to be at these press conferences, and it's very apparent to people that there is something going on there. Do you agree with David that he should not run for re-election? I'm sure your opinion may be a little bit different from the opinion that he gave as to why he should not run. Do you agree that Joe Biden should not run for re-election, and why?
Well, I mean, at this point, I'm so I did vote for Joe Biden last time. I did vote for Biden last time. The time before that, I voted Green. But I honestly, I don't really care. I don't really care which party becomes president. That's how I feel now. I think it's almost a wash. It's like you've got the war that Biden has pursued. This is horrible. The war is an environmental policy. It is a labor policy. It is an education policy. The opportunity costs of sending at least 113, possibly up to $176 billion to Ukraine. The opportunity costs are enormous here, right? The left doesn't seem to care about that. The way the Democrats have clung to their belligerent, anti-worker, bullying COVID policies. Less than a month ago, a bill came up to reinstate a bunch of airline pilots who had refused to take the jab and lost their jobs, and the Democrats wouldn't let them back, right? Even though there's a pilot shortage. So, there's all sorts of terrible things that Joe Biden has done. He ended the eviction moratorium, which Trump, it was, first of all, it was in the CARES Act, then it was extended by Trump through executive orders. Biden could have extended that. He didn't. He ended the student debt pause. That was initiated by Trump by an executive order. Biden he's helped rebuild the EPA, which is good. He added $1 billion to it. So it's got a $10 billion budget. But at the same time, in his first 2 years, he has issued more oil and gas leases than Trump did. Almost about the same, 6,900 versus 6,200 for Trump. But, you add it all up. I mean, Trump had horrible labor policies, stacked the NLRB so that its rulings were basically whatever the Chamber of Commerce wanted. His environmental policies were awful. So I'm not saying Trump was better, but it's kind of a wash, really. So I don't really care, to be perfectly honest. I'm feeling very, very cynical and pretty angry towards the Democrats. Now, speaking at, putting on the racehorse, what should they do? I suppose they should get rid of Biden because he is quite old and he does seem to be cognitively impaired. I resisted that for a long time because he seemed to be doing a pretty good job. There would be clips of him bumbling around, and then there'd be clips of him where he had enough Provigil and a good night of sleep or whatever, and he could really articulate his points and bring it. But 80 years old is pretty old. It's a pretty exhausting regimen. So I think they're maybe realizing that they need to have him, replace him. But I don't know. Who knows? Who knows if Biden will go along with that? And then there's also the fact that this is another thing the left has totally denied, totally like to the level of hallucinatory nonsense, denied the reality of Hunter Biden's laptop, right? For the longest time, I mean, some pretty critically minded left-wing activist type friends of mine were denying that this was real until the Washington Post and the New York Times finally admitted, okay, the laptop is real. Well, the laptop is real, and never mind the sex and cocaine on there. It's about the emails and business dealings. And there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that Hunter Biden was influence peddling and making a lot of money trading on his father's name. And that is not going away. That can't just be swept under the rug. It was for the last election. You know, the story of that laptop is Hunter Biden leaves, Hunter Biden has a horrendous wound and trauma as a kid when his mother dies and his sister dies in a car accident. Later in life, he's sober for like 10 years. Then his brother dies tragically of brain cancer. And at that point, he falls off the wagon and he goes on a bit of a rampage. And amidst that rampage, he leaves his laptop at a repair shop in Wilmington, Delaware, and doesn't come back for it. And he signs a contract that says if you abandon this laptop, it's ours eventually. The guy who owns a laptop repair shop made numerous documented attempts to get in touch with Hunter Biden to give him this back. And he opens up the laptop, and once it's finally his, the repair shop's possession, and he realizes, whoa, this is Hunter Biden's laptop, and he gets freaked out. So he tries to give the laptop to the FBI. They reject it. His father tries to give it to the FBI. They reject it again. Then finally, they accept the laptop in January. I think it's around January. Maybe it's in the early spring of 2020. So this is in 2019. He's been trying to give them this laptop. When they're rejecting it, he's like really freaked out about what this means. So he gives a copy somewhere along the line to Rudy Giuliani. The FBI come, they take the laptop from this guy, Mac Isaacson. They tell him people who keep their mouth shut about this, generally nothing happens to them. Giuliani has a laptop and he thinks, whoa, this is our October surprise. He gives the contents of the laptop to Miranda Devine at the New York Post. Miranda Devine begins writing articles about this. In the meantime, through 2020, the FBI and other agencies of state, through the Aspen Institute, through nonprofits that don't have, not have any fingerprints on it, starts convening meetings with social media and the legacy media to say, hey, we have reason to believe that there is going to be a Russian disinformation operation that's about disrupting our elections, and it's going to involve claims that Hunter Biden lost a laptop, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to be aware of this. We're not telling you what to do. You guys are patriots. You figure it out. So when Miranda Devine's stories come out in September of 2020, New York Post's Twitter handle is shut down for a while. The whole story is killed. So, this is the FBI indirectly intervening in the election. Okay, were the Republicans playing dirty tricks? Yeah, it's an October surprise. I want to play dirty, great. Okay, but it's like the organs of state power, it would seem, intervened in that election. So they were successful that time around, but this time they realized they can't do it. The other thing that's happened, which is crazy, is that Hunter Biden had this plea deal arranged around a gun charge and tax evasion. And embedded in that plea deal was immunity that extended to all sorts of other potential and known issues arising from the laptop. And the judge was so freaked out by this that she asked the prosecutor, have you ever seen anything like that? He said, no, I haven't. And she was unwilling to certify to go along with this plea deal. So the plea deal fell apart. The plea deal has fallen apart. Hunter Biden is apparently digging in, and he has now been, just like today or yesterday, indicted on federal gun charges. He's saying, from what I've read, I don't know if this is true, but what I'm reading, is that he's apparently like he wants to go to trial, and they might even call Joe Biden as witness. So like with that whole story in the background, that plus Joe Biden's cognitive decline, yeah, I could imagine if I was a Democratic strategist, I'd be I'd be concerned that wouldn't go so well for Joe, and maybe we should replace him. Because also the thing with dementia, senility, getting old, whatever it is, you never know what this stuff is. And sometimes people can hold steady, just kind of like not as sharp as they were, and it goes on for years and years. But sometimes people can have rather rapid, precipitous decline. So I think they also are worried that they don't know what will happen necessarily with Joe Biden. Maybe Joe Biden can hold it together. Maybe he'll be exactly the way he is now, which is like, okay, the guy's old, but he can also still make a speech. He can still hold it together. Maybe he'll be like this in a year, but maybe he'll be in much worse shape. And if that's the case, then that could be very serious. So yeah, I think they're kind of they've got a problem. And they're throwing all these charges at Trump. 91 charges, 4 indictments, and the guy's mugshot looks like a professional photographer took it. This is like, what are we in somebody's novel? This is crazy, isn't it? It's like, this is like a movie where it's like the Teflon invincible bad guy, his mugshot, where like, this is it, man. We've got him. This is the scalp we take to humiliate the other side. And then it's like, instead, like the next day, Trump is selling it in swag and using it. So I think that got them spooked. They realized this stuff is not working. And they've almost jumped the shark a little bit, because it's like, what kind of person who's on the fence is going to be able to dig into 91 charges, 4 indictments? It's like, man, that's a huge research project right there. So, I think the effect is just like, it's just, they oversold this. What? And then like Biden gun charge, and then all this stuff about these deals, and they'll start quoting the emails and to a wider and wider public, 10% for the big guy. And pretty soon there's a lot of swing voters who are just going to be like, once again, it's a wash, whatever. They're all corrupt. I'll vote for one of them, or I won't vote for either of them. And, so the whole campaign of lawfare against Trump by the Democrats threatens to be a wash or worse. It could backfire.